Welcome back to another tutorial. So in the past video we got introduced to what a class, object and a method is, and in this tutorial we're going to be taking a deeper look at methods, and we're also going to be understanding what constructors are. So let's get started. Alright then, so in front of you you can see three different classes, and each class has a different method. So the first thing that you see about this car class is that it begins with the word public. Alright, so I'm just going to underline that. And next you see that there is this word called void. And finally we find the method's name, and the method's name is called start. Alright then, so I've underlined all three of the main words here, and now I'm going to explain what each of them are. So public, what does that mean in terms of a Java method? So the public keyword, it's basically a keyword. This public Java keyword, it indicates who can access the method. So public basically means that any class can access the start method. Alright, so that's what the public word means in terms of methods. So in terms of the three classes, car, cat and calculator, both cat and calculator can access the start method that's in the car class. Alright, so both cat and calculator classes So that's what the word public meant. It controls the access of different methods, and it tells you who can access which method. Alright then, so next we have the word void. So what does void mean? Void is basically a return type. So when you see the word void, it means that the method does not return anything. Not return any value to the user. So in the next two cases we're going to see methods which return, for example, integers, or which return strings. But in terms of the car class's start method, start is not going to return anything back to the user. That's why we've written void. And the method name here is start. And finally, we have one more thing. We have these, these brackets here. So what do these brackets mean? So I'm just going to write that down too. So brackets in methods hold different parameters. So what is a parameter basically? And I'm not going to explain that now. We're just going to move on to the next example, and then you'll understand that what a parameter basically is. For now, all you need to know is that the public keyword in Java means any class can access the start method. Void means that there's not going to be any return type to the user. The method's name is start, and brackets hold parameters. That's about it. Alright then, so let's move on to the next class. Okay, so here you can see again, let's start marking. Let's get a brush, and so here you can see that this method also starts with public. Then we also have another void here. Void means what? Void means that this method is not going to return anything to the user. Next we have our method name called make noise. And finally, inside the brackets, we have our very first parameter. Alright, so I'm just going to explain what this string noise basically means now. the parameter in any method is its input. Alright, so here string noise basically means that noise is a variable of type string, and the user has to enter a value, a string value, because there is a parameter here. Alright, so I'm going to just explain that again. In this method, noise is a variable of data type string, which the user is going to have to enter as an input. So for example, if the user enters the word let's say per as input, then the noise variable is going to store per. Noise will basically equal to per. Alright then, so I hope I made myself clear in this case. The difference between the cat class and the car class is that it has a parameter in the method. So the parameter here is string noise, and noise is the name of a variable of type string. So in this case, what the user has to do is they have to give a string input. For example, the user enters per, and this input will be stored in the variable noise. Alright, so in the next tutorial we're going to be tracing a method, and it's also going to become much clearer then when we see how every method actually works. Finally, we have our calculator class here. So let's move on to that. Alright then, so it starts off with public again, which means that the cat and car class can access the method add. Next we have our return type. So the difference between the calculator class and the other two classes is that there is no void here. There is a return type called int. So the return type here is int. This means that the method will return an integer value to the user. Alright, so that's what the word int here is used for. Alright then, so let's move on, and next we have the method name, which is basically add. And next we have two input parameters, int num1 and int num2, which basically means this method takes two numbers as an input from the user. So inside this method, what we can see is this.sum is equal to num1 plus num2. So what does this.sum mean? We just need to learn this one last thing before we can move on to the next topic. This dot sum means the global variable, means a global variable. A variable outside the constructor. Alright, so what this dot sum means is that it's referencing the global variable here called sum. Alright, so whenever we use this keyword in any constructor, say for example this dot play or this dot, let's say, sub, you'll always have to look for the global variable, which will be inside the class. Alright, so that's what the keyword this means. Now let's move on to our next topic called constructors. Okay, So a constructor is basically a special kind of method that we call when an object is created. The main difference between a constructor and a method is that a constructor will never have a return type. So I'm just going to write that down. Constructor will never have a return type. Okay, so that's the main difference between a constructor and a method. One other difference is that when an object is created, that's when the constructor is called. So the constructor is called only when a new object is created. And there's one other thing that you need to know about constructors. Java makes a default constructor for every single class. Alright, so even if you don't define a constructor for a class, Java will make a default one for you. So let's get started and let's see what a constructor looks like. Okay, take for example that I have a dog class and I want the user to input the dog's name as soon as an object is created. So here is my dog class, public class dog, and we have one variable in the class. The variable is called name and the data type is string. And here is the constructor. I'm just going to mark that with a box. This right here from public dog string name is our constructor. Constructor for the dog class. Alright, so this is basically the syntax for a constructor. You start off with public, then you have to write the class name, and then any parameters. Remember that we took a look at parameters just a few minutes ago. Any parameters that you want the user to input, you're going to have to put between the brackets, and then it's just the normal things. So what's basically happening in this dog class is that we have a constructor that takes a variable called name of data type string as a parameter, and inside you can see that there is this thing called this.name. So here you need to note that this dot name references the global name variable. This is a really important thing. The global name variable in the dog class. So basically this dot name is the same as this name here, alright? But it's completely different from this name, the one that we took as our parameter. So this is our parameter and this is our parameter and this is our global variable. Okay, so if you understood up to this point, then the remainder shouldn't be that difficult. Public class dog tester is our tester class. Here we've created an object called D, type dog class. So I'm just going to write that here. Object of class dog called D. And it takes the string Rocky as an input because we have to take a string input there. So it takes Rocky as input. So that basically means that name is now equal to Rocky. So when we print our d.name, the output that we'll get is basically Rocky. So output is Rocky. Alright then, so that was the end of our tutorial. Today we discussed, the different types of methods in Java and also what a constructor is and how to write one. And thank you. Please look out for the next tutorial. We're going to be discussing how to trace object-oriented code.